Hello everyone, Kurt Alfred here, and welcome back to another episode from Fiore Labs. Today's going to be another commentary video. This is actually in response to a question that was out there provided by a viewer, in which they were asking, it's like, we've heard you talk about how using Fiore shapes and structures and everything has kind of helped you battle some of your own pain in life, and then also in this practice of, the historical martial arts. And he was kind of curious about as far as, why is that, or how is that, or what exactly are the benefits of that. So this video is gonna be a little bit about that, and, just kind of sharing some of the things that I see within my body. And also, I'm also kind of sharing a little bit of things out there when it comes down to what other people observed. And I know there's people that made videos on this too, about that too as well. So a little bit of that. So first and foremost, there are two realms in which making these structures has really helped me out as far as for the stress of hand-to-hand kind of combat training. And the first one is, we'll talk about the one that may be evident, maybe not be evident, and that is essentially within the structures. So by making a structure that fits this Segno need, which I'm calling this a Segno stance, and I have the agency to be able to move and ground, and I know I can move at a moment's notice. I know I can take shots at a moment's notice. And then from there, I also have speed, and when I'm ready, I can take those actions to go forward. That makes movement really effortless. And for a long time, for anyone who's ever seen any stuff that's on my Facebook page, I know some people talk about an old video of me, like where literally it looks like the sword is leading me. I'm literally like swinging at a pal, and I'm like this. I'm not upright with this. I'm leaning forward. I'm chasing the sword after myself here. It looks like I'm like riding like it's a bucking bronco or something like that. It's kind of ridiculous. But I love that video because it tells me how much I was very dedicated to wanting to get into this. But it caused me a lot of problems. So let's talk a little bit about structures first. So one thing here, this is a little bit of the philosophy on things. One thing I was taught a long time ago is that, when you add any more to your body, anything more to your body, you automatically are out of balance. Automatically. So if you're talking about like using a sword, that's an extra 3 pounds plus leverage, plus weight, everything else, plus gravity, plus, all these other things that I don't really know how to quantify it out by, that is pulling you into a direction of wherever that sword is at. I know there's videos as far as, and there's other videos where I've shown like, how you find your center space and everything. That already in itself is a workout. And if you do armor, like I do armor, just by standing, you're working out. There's a lot to that, So that's the first thing in that. The second thing about that is, so if you already are adding excess to your body weight, to your mass and everything else, then that means that over time, you are going to be really stressing out your body. You're going to be over torquing it. Your balance is forward. You're already going to start having issues that are going to start causing larger scale problems. If you were like me and you lean very far forward, and again, I'm not telling you what's right or wrong here. I'm just telling you this is my story and why I say that making the shapes of Fiore really kind of helped me with a lot of my physical pain. If you were like me and you lean forward a lot, and then that I have to go forward with this. Well, there's a couple things that you may be observing within yourself. One, if someone surprises you, there is almost like this whoa momentum that's going back because all of your weight is forward, and to come back to overcompensate, that's a lot to get there. Another thing that may happen here is if you notice that if your lead leg is locked into place, well, then you really only have one direction that you're really going. It's a plane like this right here versus a balanced stance, which allows you to shift in all directions. Again, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't find it very beneficial at this stage of life that I'm in. So that also means that a lot of your smaller muscles, at least a lot of my smaller muscles, were doing what the total of the body should be doing, and that's stressing them out. So there was a video out there, another HEMA practitioner out there, and I don't want to voice people on this right here unless they give me permission to, but there was a video that they were talking about that they had injured their shoulder and how it had to do a lot about using foam tag or posto di donna, if you will, and that a lot of the stuff that they were doing is that they were pushing with just this one muscle right here, this tendon really, in the shoulder, and I forget what it was for them, that it was stressing so much that they had to get surgery. So a swing is all of the back. And when we utilize all of the back, then yes, you are still going to have muscular fatigue, etc. out there, but you're also going to have more of you working for this extension than just this one muscle piece here. Another thing that really hurt me out is, like, so again, if I'm leaning forward here, that means all my back is holding up all my front rather than letting it sit on my hips. And for anyone maybe have done backpacking out there, if you have it out high on your shoulders, it's going to fall forward. Well, essentially the same thing. The other one I'd like to talk about is, essentially is, stance work with your feet. And I'm pretty particular about that. And I really stress this with my students, and I also stress it for my own practice. But if my feet, how I stand with my feet is also a major factor. So case in point, if I'm standing here like with my feet like they're like it's a fencing, like an Olympic fencing stance or something along this right here, a very narrow stance, but I have both hands on the sword. When we clash, and that happens, then that means that the rear leg, the only thing that is actually bracing me and my grounding, my elephants, is actually my abductors in the leg. The muscle I learned was called the gracilis. So please correct me if it's something different, but I understand it to be the gracilis. That's the knee up into the groin area. That one band is the thing that's holding everything against this 100 whatever plus pound person. That one muscle is what's resisting that. I had several hip issues, groin issues that came from this whole thing right here, from muscle push, over torquing on this, knee tension on this. And then I just did one thing, slightly turning inward. I'm not saying that you have to be straightforward. I'm not talking about a kendo stance, although if you've seen any of the visuals about posta frontale and posta longa, you might see what I'm talking about here. But here, when I had my hips in line with my shoulder, now the totality of my back, my hamstrings, my calves, my quads are engaged, and that's the support level, and then it upwards as far as the body. So now I went from trading off one muscle to a whole bunch of them right there that allow me to contend with that weight value there. So again, I'm not stressing one muscle out, I am reinforced with so many. So those are a couple of the reasons right there when it comes down to why I say that making these stances has helped me and why I find betterment in this. Another thing too is, with my foot being open like this and my hands being forward, try this at home. Honestly, one of the things I've noticed with myself is that when I have my feet are straight forward, my hands are forward, I'm not pinching up here. If my hands are forward, in a forward position, even I'm turning here, right? So we know it's right here. Even just by doing this right here, you might notice that your hips are moving. So your feet are going to be moving. If I'm forward with this, well, I need to make sure that there's space here so I don't actually torque or pull in on these muscles again. So pectorals, your rotator cuff muscles, there's all sorts of things right here that surround those right here that if you are pinching that off and really kind of tension right here, try to push with the hand, you may be fighting with one muscle rather than complementing it with all muscles. Okay, so that's a couple of the structural things that I found benefit on. Another thing that I found benefit on is like how I build my stances while I stand upright here. So one thing this was given to me by I would say a teacher of mine that talked to me about, I used to sit there with a lower stance. I'm leaning forward. Well, leaning forward, I was also choking myself out. And I didn't know this. So leaning forward, if I'm leaning forward at something like this, or I'm like really leaning in, I'm putting my head up like this, I'm arching, I would breathe with my mouth and a lot of this right here. And if you find yourself doing this, well, there's a quick thing to observe with this. So I'm just going to do a quick example of this. This is another reason why standing upright and having structure actually helped me out. Okay, so if I go like this to the side, right? So you can hear the breathing with the nose is relatively easy. If I turn my head backwards, I'm choking my airways off. So my neck being compressed is making it harder to breathe. Now everyone, of course, is going to be a little bit different, but I found this to be very true. So now you might be thinking, well, who fights like this right here? You are fighting that way if you're leaning forward. and you're turning your neck upwards. So by rectifying the body, structuring up this way, right? I can breathe, I can see everything, I've got speed, and the whole of my body is working for me. And Lichtenauer states, fight with all of the body. I don't think that means to be powerful. I don't think it means to just rush at the person. I think it means that you need to use multiple muscles to get to a space, and that the stance, perhaps, is made to accommodate that. So that's just a piece right there. Those are the major physical ones. There's a lot of other ones right there, but again, like just making those small adjustments for me. I already have a lot of pain in my life, and why should the thing that I practice be adding to that pain? And that's where I have to do the work to change and get myself out of it. There's muscular things out there that change the narrative of this, and I find that it helps me out to do these things for myself here. Okay, so the second one I'm going to talk about is much more of a psychological factor, and that is, again, so if you put these things into place, think about this. If you feel like you can move, if you feel like you can ground yourself, if you feel like you can breathe, if you feel like you can resist the shot of someone coming at you, that's confidence, right? You're more likely to be able to take action there. You're more likely to be able to respond as needed. If we feel like we're pushed too hard against something, we may, in heightened senses of stress, whether that be in sport or real situation, push harder than what's necessary. So just by letting my body do what it had to do to accommodate for itself was enough for me to be able to, I don't have to move as much here. When I have to move here, I can move with ease. If the mind is rigid, this has been my experience, if the mind is rigid and focuses on something, then the rest of the body will also follow suit. That rigidity there is a cause to injury. That rigidity is to sharp, jerky movements, right? And that sharp, jerky movement to a savvy opponent is just like a free lunch dinner, right? Oh, that's nice, easy. But at the same time, too, for us, it is also a major detriment. That's how muscles get pulled. That's how tears happen. You move from one spot to the other without having a foundation on things. And these things right here can have us prolonged to have longer durations of injury. So by having the mind be put at ease, I felt like I was at ease. And by being at ease, I found that my body relaxed and could be responsive to things. Now, I know some people out there may be thinking, how do I get in there really fast with this? Well, this is true. And one thing that I will quote many of the Marine Corps combat instructors that I had before. Remember, like I said, not an infantry guy, but I was in the part of the McMat program, which I really wish they did differently because I think it's a fantastic, it's really a fantastic course. It is, you could do everything right and still end up losing. And in what we do, simulating getting killed, right? So, but at the end of the day here, we don't have choice of that. So when we have choice to be able to practice, which is what the realm of really in, then essentially we allow ourselves the ability to give ourselves that grace that's necessary so that we don't have to hurt our bodies. Like, God, man, why does my lower back hurt? Well, your chest and your shoulders are over your back right here, and your foot's off to the side here, so your lower back is all encompassing that. Your knees are straight right there so that the quads can't engage. And this actually right here, once again, is a point back to my previous video where a previous video of mine where I talked about what makes a maestro and understanding what medicine is and understanding some of the physical forms of things. This does not mean, of course, that one has to be a doctor, but just knowing a little bit about your body and how things happen and how things work differently can go milestones different as far as changing up your game and doing it. So, ultimately, it's really a matter of time. And, when you don't feel like you have time, well, there could be a couple factors there. One, it could be a confidence thing. Maybe everything's happening in that combat situation, that training situation, that whatever situation is too fast, right? we will always tense. We will always revert into bracing and trying to gain control. Whatever that looks like for the person, we're always going to go towards that. So as we're building up our fundamentals of how we move towards something, it's important to be able to feel like we have agency to move. If we have locked up our bodies and only given ourselves one way out instead of multiple ways out, then we're doing it to ourselves. It's not the opponent, it's us. The opponent's doing the exact thing that they should be doing, which in this situation right here, they're trying to overcome us. But we are also adding to that repertoire by choosing to be, I gotta get in there fast. And yes, speed is absolutely necessary. It's in the Segno, celerity, pretezza, right? However, speed without prudence or awareness, avvisamento, is nothing. And strength without courage does not leave you founded to take those actions. So I hope this has been helpful in answering the question out there for the one individual that had made this comment, and not just the one. There's been several people saying, what is this whole thing right here? Well, it's a lot to unpack. It's a lot to unwrap. And I know it's a little bit longer video here, but I thought this was very important to kind of talk about out there because again, what makes good training? What makes effective training? Well, that's a hard question, right? Personally, as I'm getting older, effective training is stuff that means that I can replicate over and over and over again, and I can do this 7 days a week. Training, the more reps and sets that you get with training, the more likely you're able to retain some of that information. To quote my late sensei, Sensei Lorimer, he used to tell us in class, and it hit me hard. I used to do kendo. And he said, if you're coming to class expecting me to make you better, then I can't, then you will always be lagging behind. You have to take this stuff and go home. You have to go work with it. That is part of the practice. That's part of the way. And, it doesn't have to be like, I have to go out there every day and be really hard about this. Hard to be hard. You can do that if you get the body and the joints for it. I certainly don't anymore. Or you can do the things there that are going to give you responsive actions that you can do. Footwork while doing vacuuming. Handwork over there, taking a break from computer work and working off of, the post along into denti di cinghiale and frontale and everything else. How are we working those things, right? So the practice that you do does not always have to be hard. It can be leveled. And it can be something right there that is regimented. And it is something there that can allow you to apply it to every day of life. So with that being said here, everybody, again, I hope this has been helpful for some people out there. Again, because like I said, I think that this whole practice that we're doing it's a wonderful thing. And I really struggle sometimes as an instructor when I watch people and they say things like, oh man, my shoulder, I don't know what's going on here. I guess I have to swing harder here. And it's like, or I hear people make the comment like, God, they must have been so much stronger than us back then. Well, not necessarily. Not necessarily. I think that's also a falsehood, and that diminishes us in the modern era. And yes, certainly there are things that we are not doing that they are doing, but there's other things that we are doing that they are not doing. And one of those things right here is we have the technology and information about ourselves, and we may have forgotten about this technology. And if we applied ourselves to that, you're doing a lot of the similarity there. So, again, consider this. If you have any thoughts or considerations on this, please leave a comment below. Like I said, tell me about your journey. Tell me about what's been happening with you. Let me know what you're thinking on all of this. And if this has been helpful, consider liking and subscribing to the channel. If you know someone that may be hurting on this and you've seen this happen with them, maybe share this with them. See what they have to say. Again, I don't have all the answers out there. I'm not promising that, but I'm telling you, the more that we kind of put ideas and we start sharing things here, rather than this is the way, we get more of a collective with it all. So, with that being the case, everybody, until next time, as always, be safe, train well, and fight on. I'll see you all soon.